All right, good morning and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Wednesday morning. Uh, I hope every single one of you is doing well. I hope you're having a wonderful week. Today we come 1 hour late because I thought I should tweak things a little bit. Um, our last few days, in as far as our morning broadcasts are concerned, have not been the best. Have not been the best. Hi LFC, how are you? Good morning. So I thought we should tweak things a little bit here and there and make sure we get back to our very best. So it's a pleasure to be back this morning. This morning we want to be discussing who are the best signings, who are the best and worst signings. Wait, what's wrong? What's wrong with what? Anything wrong? Not Nothing is wrong. Not on my end, anyways. But I hope you guys are doing well. You know. So we'll be talking about who was the best signing and what the best signings and worst signings of the transfer window. We know the transfer window is officially closed. I do not expect any business to be done by your respective clubs unless this is a big unless they are signing a free agent, because clubs are allowed to sign free agents. Those are players that are not tied to any club. Those are players that have pathways with the previous clubs or have no club at the moment. For example, players like Deli Ali, players like Hakim Ziyech, Michael Antonio, those kinds of players. So your club is allowed to go out and sign a player of that caliber or a player in that mode. So unless that's the case, do not expect any more incomings from your respective Premier League clubs and elsewhere across Europe, really, especially for those whose transfer window officially closed on the 1st of September. Sometimes, apologies, just trying to have our audience tested, make sure everything checks out. Sometimes different leagues have different closure dates for their respective transfer windows, so we do respect that. The same way, sometimes they have different kickoff weekends. For example, we know for a fact that the Italian Serie A kicked off a week later than the Spanish La Liga and the Premier League. I think same applies to the German Bundesliga because the Premier League, entered match day 3 prior to the international break, while the other two, that's the Italian Serie A and the German Bundesliga, had not really had too much weekends. And the Spanish La Liga, like the Premier League, had 3 match days. So, yeah, those are some of the modalities here and there. So, guys, this is an unscripted episode. Nothing. I'm just going to be because I was thinking about doing this last night, but then I figured why not push it for tomorrow morning? Because last night we did talk about who had the best, transfer window. Then we did put out a video on the channel in regards putting the question to you: who had the best transfer window among the big six? Among the big 6 clubs, who do you think has had the best transfer window? And guys, people comment on my socials when I post such questions with the link. Please do me one favor: take the comments to YouTube, so that the algorithm can help push our content. Because every time you comment on the video, YouTube, looks at that interaction and helps to push the video to other, viewers. So yesterday I did put out that video, and a lot of people are commenting on my ex post, and they're saying Liverpool, and I'm glad that we do agree, because even I did choose Liverpool as the club that has had the best transfer window in as far as the Premier League is concerned. Now, when you extend it broader to Europe, I think the will still arguably remain the club that has had the best transfer window among all the top clubs. Nonetheless, it's a subjective opinion depending on what you think your club's objectives going into the transfer window were and what they managed to achieve. Because, for example, if among our considerations to reach the conclusions that we did reach upon in that video, and I'll leave a link down in the description, was that was that how did your club perform in terms of moving on players that they thought were surplus requirements, or players that they thought they had gotten good offers for. So in some cases, it's because a club had gotten a good offer for that particular player, not because they really wanted to move them on. For example, Liverpool moving on Luis Diaz. It's not because they had wanted to move on the player, but rather a good offer came for them, and also the player wanted to leave. So that's a case in point. Another case in point is Noni Madueke from Chelsea. It's not like Chelsea I wanted to move him on, they assessed their option. They just received a good offer and they decided to sanction the sale. So those are some of the kind of deals that you did witness. Then also you look at Newcastle and Alexander Isak. The club did not want to sell. The player wanted to leave. They ended up with a good offer from Liverpool and sanctioned the move. So there are those things. Then also clubs went into the transfer window with priorities, with priorities. For example, at Manchester United, they needed goal scorers. They needed number 10s, and they brought in as many as two, Matas Cunha and Bernie Boom, for that effect. They knew they wanted a striker who is an improvement to Rasmus Højlund. They brought in Benjamin Sesko, so they achieved that. So that's a box ticked. They knew they needed a goalkeeper in this transfer window, so they went to Royal Antwerp and brought in Sene Lamens, the 23-year-old Belgian goalkeeper. So that's a team that has fixed the things they needed to fix going into the transfer window. That's a team that has achieved its objectives in as far as recruitment is concerned. How about on the movement side? Were they able to move on the players the way they had hoped for? For Manchester United, it's a 50-50. Why? In some, they moved on Alan Garnacho. You could argue they did not get what he's worth because Man United wanted at least 50 million pounds. He ended up going for 40. They wanted to move on Anthony. They managed to move him on. Did they get the desired fee? No. That's why they have a future 50% sell-on clause. So. But then you have players like Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho having to leave just on loan. They would have loved to, make permanent deals straight away. A player like Tyler Malacia, unable to be moved on. So in part, on the side of recruitment, they achieved their objectives. Was it a 10 out of 10? Definitely not. We know they wanted a central midfielder. They never managed to get one. They were interested in moving in for Carlos Baliba. They did not get that. LFC says, I need to go to school. We wish you the very best at school. It's our bad. I did come 1 hour late for today's broadcast, so it's completely understandable, but I wish you the best of luck at school. So you look at that and you assess that and think to yourself, yeah, a couple, almost they ticked almost all boxes, but there are some that remain unticked. Will it have an impact on their season? Maybe yes, maybe not. Like I said, 3 games is always very early into the season. The reason that's why I say that, if you lost, for example, your opening 3 fixtures of the season, while it does not look good on paper, I do not think it will be the end of the world for you. Not really. That's not how I would want to view it. I wouldn't view it as such, because let's say you're a big team, you lose your first 3 games of the season, and then go on to win the remaining 35 games of the season. Bye-bye to you, LFC. What would that say? You would still end up possibly being a champion. So for me, while how you start the season is important, if you have a bad start to it, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. So I do not want us to be overly concerned about those who have had a very insufficient start to the season, particularly for Manchester City. While they've not had a brilliant start, I'm cognizant of the fact that they're a team in rebuild. They're a team in transition, when you look at the kinds of players they've moved on, Kevin De Bruyne, Ilkay Gundogan, Ederson Morales, Kyle Walker, 3 of those have been team captains over the years at some point. So, you cannot ignore that fact. You cannot ignore that fact. So, it's something that you have to be alive to. in that kind of sense. So is there a lot to be done? Of course, because they're Manchester City, because it's Pep Guardiola. Everyone expects them to sort of do better or to be better. They expect them to do better. They expect them to be better than what they are. When you look at the kind of recruitment that they've managed to do just within 2025, that's in January and during the course of the summer. It's one of the most admirable, recruitment agendas that has gone on in the Premier League. So you must feel that something has to improve, but it's also going to take a bit of time. It's more like going back to 2016-2017 campaign when Chelsea were winning the Premier League title under the charges of Antonio Conte, and Pep Guardiola just walked into the Premier League. He didn't win any piece of silverware. In any case, I think they finished third or fourth on that league table. So, anyway, allow me share this. So you look at you assess that in that way. You look at a team like Manchester United, 4 points out of a potential 9 does not look good on paper. However, look at the opponents they faced. Like I said, losing to Arsenal is not the most heinous crime, given the kind of performance they had on the day. Drawing at Fulham, they could have done better. They should have done better. Then you look at their victory against Burnley. Was it convincing? It was far from convincing. But their performance, I thought, was better than the result they managed to get. Because attacking wise, they were really, really dominant in that game. They were really, really dominant in that particular game. So there are positives and negatives, and as much as some of us do not appreciate this international break, as much as some of us hate this international break, I must be honest to say I must be honest to say that it gives, while it's not good for the fans and we often slam it, it gives the clubs a bit of much needed time for review, because you go into the season after pre-season hoping that you've aligned certain things that should make you be a better team than you are the previous season. Now, the first 3 games of the season are more of an icebreaker, getting players back to their feet, trying to adapt to the intensity once again, and that's why you'll find a lot of players pick up injuries, knocks and things like that at the start of the season. Why? Because that intensity that they are going through is not one that they had taken a break off for a good couple of weeks. Now, of course, we can argue that they have intensive training. They've had pre-season, regardless of who you play at whatever level, it is still pre-season. And also, there are things you're allowed to sort of get away with during pre-season that you may not be allowed to get away with during a regular season. So you look at you go to a team like Arsenal and they already have 6 injuries within their ranks. William Saliba, Ben White, Christian Nogard, Kai Havertz, Gabriel Jesus, Bukayo Saka, all out through injury. Martin Odegaard was easily the 7th player being out through injury, and it's only been 3 weeks into the new season. So At Manchester United, Matthias Cunha is out injured. So you look at that and say to yourself, wow, how quick or how fast did this come about, And yet it somehow did. It somehow did, because I believe that there's an impact of that new intensity. Now, of course, some of the injuries are just as unfortunate as you'd have them. So, for example, when you look at William Saliba's injury during that game against Liverpool, he was barely touched. I do not know whether it was the way he landed in one of the jumps or as he walked back. I just couldn't tell. But yet somehow he ended up on the sick bay through injury. So, and he ended up pulling out of that French squad. So, anyways, let's look at the best. What are the best signings of this transfer window? I mean, do we go from number 10? Do we go from number 1? Because, like I said, I've not listed those names on paper, but I'll go about them like this. Let's start with number 1. Number 1 for me is Alexander Isak. Again, allow me to take you back to the channel. When you go to the Footballtribeug channel and you scroll back, I think it was on it was on July 17th. Yes, July 17th. We put out a video saying why Liverpool should break the bank to sign Alexander Isak. I made that video and I was explaining why Liverpool should be breaking the bank to sign Alexander Isak. And I'm happy they did. They did. A financial outlay of £125 million plus £5 million in expected add-ons is a British record transfer fee. Now, if that's not breaking the bank, I don't know what is. Then also, they did not stop at that. They also signed Florian Wirtz. So, but back to Alexander Isak, you get a Premier League proven striker, you get a striker well within his prime, you get a striker that is well adapted to the Premier League in terms of his availability. Because when you look at his last 3 seasons at Newcastle, he made 22 appearances in his debut campaign. The subsequent season, he made 30 appearances. And the last season, he made 34 Premier League appearances. So that speaks to his improvement in his overall availability outside all competitions, but in the Premier League specifically. And I've already said this: if you have a striker in the caliber of Alexander Isak, if he's capable of being available for 30 games in a season where he's going to score you 20 to 25 goals, that's good enough. That's good enough. That's why big teams have more than one striker. So you can rely on Hugo Ekitike to fill in for the 8. You can rely on Mo Salah to come good on days when your big striker is not banging in the goals or when they're absent. So for me, I look at that and I say Alexander Isak is the best signing. You look at his goals last season: 23 goals, 6 assists, giving him a 29 goal involvement. Those are impressive figures. In, I think, 109 appearances. You look at in the Premier League alone, 30 plus 34, that's 64, plus 22, that's how many? 86 Premier League appearances, 10 goals plus 21, plus 21, that's 31, plus 23, that's 54. 54 goals in 88 Premier League appearances. That's impressive. That's impressive for Alexander Isak. So I think that's why I believe Liverpool won this battle of who had the best transfer window. So for me, that one goes down as the best signing of the transfer window. Number 2, again, I'm going to stay with Liverpool because they've been impressive in the transfer window. Signing Florian Wirtz. Now, he's yet to click. He's yet to click. And it's still a bit early. But based on talent, based on a prospect, based on what you bank on for the foreseeable future, what a talent they have on their legs, on their hands, Liverpool. So in number 2, I'm going to go with Florian Wirtz. Yes, you will argue that he's coming, he's had underwhelming performances. That's true. That's irrefutable. That's undeniable. But based on potential, you do not make a financial outlay of 160 million pounds, 116 million pounds on a player that's not good enough, on a player that's not above average, on a player that's not outstanding, So it's essentially, it has nothing to do with price in these rankings. But when you look at that talent, it's quite undeniable. In number 3, honorable mention is Hugo Ekitike. Jeremy Frimpong, unfortunately, is already injured. And this is what I was speaking about earlier on, that you have players picking up injuries very, very early into the season. So, but a honorable mention for Hugo Ekitike, because I believe he's equally talented, based on what we've so far seen. Very, very big player, very good player. In number 3, in terms of the best signings, I don't know. I'm going to go with Joao Pedro. Now, I watched that Chelsea side, and he's the kind of player that is capable of having a good game, is capable of having a brilliant game, is capable of having a bad game and still managing to score. That's the kind of player he is, getting into the right positions. You look at that goal against, was it against Fulham, the header? I stand to be corrected on that one. But when you look at his performances, go back to as far back as during the course of the Club World Cup, he's just impressive. He's just too good. And given that in this modern day and age, the player who is 23, thereabout, going on to, yes, he scored against Fulham in the 9th minute of added time in the first half. Very, very impressive, So he may not give you a 10 out of 10 performance week in, week out, but he's more like a broad Erling Haaland, not in stature of player, not in way of playing, but even on a bad day, you can't still bank on him to get you a goal. And what do we need to win games? You need goals. So I'm putting Joao Pedro in number 3. In number 4, it's a bit of a difficult one here. But I'm going to go for Arsenal's Martin Zubimendi in number 4. And hear me out on this one, because, like I said, there's so many brilliant signings out there. But I'm going to go to Martin Zubimendi. And the reason for this is as simple as, one, first of all, he's new to the Premier League, just like Florian Wirtz is, just like Ekitike is. But Arsenal losing 2 central midfielders, Thomas Partey and Jorginho, in the same transfer window was always a sticking point for me. And I always wondered, how are they going to be able to replace them? Martin Zubimendi has walked into that midfield, that Arsenal midfield, and he's fitted in well. I wouldn't say he's been outstanding, especially when you look at the Liverpool game, the Man United game, but he's done enough to convince us that better days are yet to come. That's how I look at it. So coming in to fill the void left by Jorginho, left by Thomas Partey, is no easy job. It's no easy task. But in terms of talent identification, we're talking about a player that literally the rest of Europe would have loved to have. Liverpool wanted him. Real Madrid wanted him. We know that Barcelona previously had been linked with the potential move for him, as they viewed him as, the new Sergio Busquets. So I'd go with Martin Zubimendi in number 4. In number 5, I'm going to go with Brian Mbeumo. Brian Mbeumo at Manchester United. Based on the kind of season he had last season, he's quite a scope for Manchester United. We know that Chelsea, Arsenal, Newcastle and Tottenham all wanted his services. But it was United that won the race. Impressive signing. Impressive signing. So he's already scored 2 goals for them. One against Burnley over the weekend and another against Grimsby. 2 goals so far scored in competitive games for Brian Mbeumo. So very strong, very energetic, very athletic, can dribble past players, is not easily bullied by defenders. He has that strength. And look at that goal he did score against Grimsby Town. How he literally passes that ball into the far corner was impressive. So for me, he's going to go down as number 9. Sorry, he's going to go down as number 5 in terms of the best signings of the Premier League so far in this campaign. In number 6, I'm going to go with Granit Xhaka at Sunderland. And again, some of you may disagree, but for a team like Sunderland, newly promoted from the Championship, to go to a team like Bayer Leverkusen, who are playing in the UEFA Champions League and managed to convince the Switzerland national team captain to come and join you, ought to be commended. For Sunderland, they get a Premier League proven player, having spent, I think, about 5 years at Arsenal. Remember, he left after the 2022-2023 campaign. I think he had joined Arsenal back in 2016, summer of 2016, when Arsene Wenger was still at the club, that kind of thing. But Sunderland get themselves a leader, a vocal player, a player that is capable of galvanizing a team, a player that is able to command a team on the pitch, a player that is a winner. Yes, he's a winner. He went to Bayer Leverkusen and won the German Bundesliga in 2023-2024 campaign, as well as the German Cup. They reached the finals of the UEFA Europa League. So he's very capable, very dynamic, has that long-range pass, can't go from distance, but most importantly is his leadership qualities. For a team that is just come out of the Championship, you need that. You need whatever form of experience that you can get at this level if you want to sort of have better odds of staying up. While my prediction remains that they will be relegated, or among the teams that could be relegated, I wouldn't be surprised if they are not. Because when you look at the signings they've made, Simon Adingra, Alawi, what's the other gentleman's name? I'm forgetting. Excuse me. Apologies on that one. Yes. Let me see if I can find the name here. Yes, Habib Diarra. When you look at some of those signings that they've managed to walk in through the door, you can't help but commend them, really. So Granit Xhaka is number 6 on my list in terms of the best signings of this transfer window. Now, in number 7, I'm going to go to Man City and pick Dejan Reinders. Again, it's still a little too early, perhaps to pass overall judgment. But based on what I saw, as Manchester City swept Wolves off their feet, as they blew Wolves away, Dejan Reinders is quite a player. He's quite a player. Very, very impressive. I mean, he did it all. He provided the assist. He scored. If you are watching Tijan Reenders for the first time, like many people, if that's the only game that you would ever play, that you go to watch him, you would not have to think about Kevin De Bruyne in a Manchester City jersey. That's how good he was on that given day. Now, of course, subsequent performances have not been as good, but also it's because, in part, Pep Guardiola keeps on tinkering with his team, and we are talking about a player who is new to the Premier League and new to this team that needs to build partnerships. The players that make you better because they understand your movement, they understand how you relate on the pitch. When you go to nick a short pass, when you're going to go long, how you make your runs. So it may take a bit of time for him to overall gel, but I think he will come in as my number 7 for the best signing of the transfer window. In number 8, I'm going to go with Everton's Jack Grealish. 4 assists in 2 Premier League games. That's impressive. In their 2-0 victory at Goodison Park, who was it against? Oh, Jesus Christ. And their 3-2 victory away to Wolves. Yes, the 2-0 victory against Brighton and Hove Albion at the Hill Dixon Stadium. Hill Dixon Stadium. That's Everton's new stadium. That was impressive. That was impressive performance, as was that one away to Wolves. So in number 8, I'm going for Jack Grealish. I'm going for Jack Grealish. Among the best signings of the transfer window. Then in number 9, I'm going to go with João Paulinho. João Paulinho at Tottenham. Now, some of you are thinking, why are you not going for the obvious Mohamed Kudus or Xavi Simons? They're all immaculate players, very, very decent players. Take nothing away from them. But based on what Tottenham needed, a player that is going to cushion that backline, João Paulinho is good. Premier League proven, having had a stint at Fulham, and given that Jovic Bissouma had blown sort of hot and cold, they needed somebody to help Lucas Parkfield in that midfield. And for me, based on what that kind of signing means to Tottenham Hotspur, is why he comes in at number 9. João Paulinho. It's okay if you do disagree. I respect that, but he is the player I'm choosing. He is the player I'm choosing. Then, in number 10, I'm going to go with Victor Gyökeres at Arsenal. Why? We know Arsenal have needed a striker for ages. But getting Victor Gyökeres for £64 million is in itself impressive. But also, for me, it doesn't matter, or it matters any less, or it matters less whether he scores against the big teams or not. If he can bang in goals against the small teams and mid-table teams, that's all that Arsenal need. Because when you look at Arsenal's past 2-3 seasons, their biggest headache has not been with the big teams. It's been with those small teams, with those mid-table teams. They need to blow them away. And if Victor Gyökeres can help them achieve that, then that's all that will matter. So for me, those are my top 10 signings of this transfer window. Of course, it wouldn't be a ranking without some honorable mentions. Ebeleche Eze to Arsenal is impressive. Matthias Cunha to Manchester United, very, very impressive. Douglas Luiz, if he can pick up the form he had at Aston Villa, at Nottingham Forest, it's going to be impressive to watch. is going to be impressive to watch. Joel Hato at Chelsea is another honorable mention that I would want to give. I mean, I'd already given an honorable mention to Hugo Ekitike earlier on in this video. But I look at all that, assess all that, and it's impressive. Really, really impressive to watch. So for me, those are some of the honorable mentions that I must make, to that effect. Then I'm trying to think, what's the other player? There's a player whose name is eluding me that I thought I should be giving an honorable mention in as far as this transfer window is concerned. Okay. Oh, the name is eluding me. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. It's been nice having you. I hope you have a good day, LFC, and every single one of you that is managed to catch this podcast. Like I keep saying, go over to the channel, watch our content. Do let me know what your thoughts are in regards to my grading of what the best transfer window among the top 6 in the Premier League, and also your views on who are the best signings in the Premier League so far, or that have been in this transfer window. I've given you my top 10. Give me yours. Thanks for watching and stay blessed. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.